Welcome to our Early Childhood Fixer-Upper webinar series. I'm Margot Vaughn. Kathleen Wright and I are coordinators of Early Childhood Special Education at the Department of Education's Training and Technical Assistance Center at Virginia Tech. This four-part webinar focuses on tools and strategies that can be implemented to make building social-emotional skills a priority as children and adults return to school in these uncertain times. Just a little FYI about this series. Each webinar has a major topical focus or theme. We will provide some talking points related to this theme, and we will provide you with tools for your toolbox. Each of the slides that has this title provides information that is referenced and linked in the resources outline that should have been sent with an email confirmation when you registered for the series. If you would like to take notes today, there's a webinar guide that is linked at the top of the resources outline, and it is provided to you in a format that makes it easy to walk through the webinars and jot down your thoughts and your action steps. For this four-part webinar series, we are focusing on 4 components of social emotional needs that are critical to consider in order to build a safe and comfortable learning environment for young children. The areas illustrated on the blueprint include responsive relationships, targeted social emotional teaching, high quality supportive environments, and taking care of yourself. This webinar will focus on exploring teaching strategies to build social emotional learning. We wanted to illustrate the components of social emotional needs in this way, using a house to demonstrate the importance of each of these pieces in order to build a positive classroom community. As you can see, you and your toolbox are the foundation and the rock of this structure, with each component subsequently built on top of the other.
For our webinar today, we would like you to consider regrouping, as in think about the teaching practices that you currently or last year utilized in your classroom to support social and emotional learning. We then want you to assess the details of these practices and explore the potential use of other tools and other strategies that might be needed during this time to support children. Lastly, we would like for you to consider how you can rehab your design. Consider what changes or updates are needed to the daily routines and how you can put these upgrades into place. Ask yourself what resources you will need, who will you need to talk to, and how will you get support to help you make these changes. I'm sure that you all are familiar with Chip and Joanna Gaines and their show Fixer Upper, where they take a house that is sometimes falling down, sometimes it's in pretty good shape, and they turn it into a dream house for the participants of the show. Likewise, we are suggesting that you have a foundation of practices that you have been using in your classroom. And perhaps all it takes is one tiny change to turn something into exactly what you need to fit the situation in which you find yourself. For this webinar series, here's your supply list. You must know and be familiar with the new procedures and routines that have been put into place because of COVID. Find out from families what has been going on, what they have experienced, what hardships they have faced since their students have not been in school. And consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs, not only in relation to your families and your students, but to yourself as well.
Over the years, there has been a tremendous battle between academics and social emotional learning, particularly in early childhood. The push down from upper grades has created a frenzied pace, really, for getting children, quote unquote, ready for kindergarten. Given the situation in which we find ourselves now, it is very critical to ensure that we are focusing on social emotional learning and perhaps weaving in some trauma informed approaches to regrouping so that we can ensure we are providing the most supportive learning environment where children can feel safe and where children can thrive.
Robert Pianta is one of the authors of the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, otherwise known as the CLASS, which is a classroom assessment tool utilized in all of the Virginia Preschool Initiative programs in the Commonwealth of Virginia. There's been a significant amount of research on this topic. And essentially, the research has shown that effective teacher-child interactions lead to better cognitive, behavioral, and social outcomes. Reading the quote, dozens of studies from all across the country converge on the findings that it is the qualities and nature of interactions between adults and children that are responsible for children's learning and development. As we move through the webinar today, we are going to focus on 4 major areas of growing responsive relationships with students. Number 1, know your people. Know your families, know your students, and know yourself. Number 2, we will focus on growing relationships, and we will discuss strategies that can help you do that. Thirdly, we will discuss how to engage in supportive conversations with children. And finally, we'll take all the moving parts of what is going on in your classroom and discuss the intentionality behind those strategies and routines. There is probably nothing more important in early childhood education than relationships. Every child needs to feel connected to their teacher to feel secure enough to learn. Here's another great quote about relationships. Young children experience the world in the context of relationships. And in turn, these relationships also lay the foundation for later developmental outcomes, including self-confidence, mental health, motivation to learn, achievement in school, and conflict resolution. Families are really where you are going to start. They're the stepping off point. They have experienced things firsthand and know much more about kind of the status of their children at this point. We want to use that information because we know what they have experienced is going to shape how hard or in what way we approach building relationships with students. And we want to begin to grow those relationships as quickly as possible. Here is your first tools for your toolbox. This is an example of a way to gather information from families and caregivers to find out what experiences or changes took place while students were out of school due to COVID. This is probably the first kind of information that you should gather from families so that you are able to properly approach students in building relationships. In a similar fashion, we want to make sure that we also consider and gather information about our students. Learn about each student's preferences and interests. Find out about their backgrounds and their cultures so you can interact with them in ways that build on this knowledge. By having this information, your conversations with each child can be more relevant and interesting to the child, as well as respectful to the child's background and identity. So let's talk about growing relationships with children. There are several important messages that we would like to focus on in this webinar today. And the first message is, I see you. Here are some strategies that you can use to send children this message. Greeting children upon arrival is a wonderful way to start the day. You're telling students that you know who they are and that they are important to you. Using students' names as you're interacting with them throughout the day tells them not only that you know them, but that you see them as an individual student, that you recognize them, that you honor who they are. Another way to tell them that same message is to spend time with them individually, to find opportunities to connect to their interests or to share time in their activities. By posting students' work around the room, by embracing their individuality and recognizing their efforts, you are helping students to be known, to help them understand their strengths. Also, sharing information about yourself, particularly now, will help children see you as a person, not just a teacher. It's always so startling for children to learn that teachers do not live in a classroom and sleep there overnight. Here's the next tools for your toolbox. This information shows teachers how to draw emphasis to specific characteristics that children have and help children understand how those characteristics positively impacted other students and other people in the classroom. You'll see there at the bottom, the example says, you scooted over so John would have more space in the circle. That was helpful. So instead of providing students with a blanket, good job, or kiss your brain, instead, using skills of noticing allows teachers to teach very specific ideas with the hope that once children understand what that characteristic means and understand how it positively impacts those around them, that children will be more likely to engage in that behavior with that characteristic in the future. Another message you want to send to children is, I'm here for you. One of the easiest ways to do that is by getting down on their level. There's something about being able to look at somebody in the eyes without having to look up or down or sideways. You're right there. You're right there in front of them. When you are with children, it's so important to be perfectly present. Listen intently, even if you don't intend to respond. Be okay without knowing all of the answers and reduce distractions, or at least make an attempt not to notice distractions. Another way to send the message of I am here for you is to show enthusiasm. Because students are not going to be able to see your mouth, you may discover that you have to overly dramatize these actions or reactions so that students know, man, you are their cheerleader. Consider things from a child's perspective. Why is the student behaving the way that he or she is? What does the student need? How can you offer support? This reframing idea allows adults to move to a more positive place when thinking about and describing situations and behaviors. The reframed statement considers what children's behavior might be trying to tell us. Being able to have a trusting relationship requires children to feel safe in the care of adults. We cannot begin to create an emotional tie if children do not feel secure. Remember, safety needs are one of the two basic needs in Maslow's hierarchy. Adults need to be consistent and follow through with what they say they are going to do, particularly during this time when the landscape will be ever changing. You and your words will become the predictability that children can depend on. Empathy is a way of connecting with students. It shows children that you know they're experiencing something, even if you don't exactly know how it feels to them. Empathy says, I want you to know that you're not alone, and I want to understand how this feels for you. This message is very important for children to hear. When children feel understood and supported, they are motivated, they're self-aware, and they're better able to speak to what it is that's bothering them. Acknowledging and valuing your child's feelings is a powerful way to connect. The previous tools for your toolbox provided important information about reframing the way that you're looking at a situation. That reframed idea can work its way into the language that you use when you're showing empathy to students. Self-talk is a method of speaking intentionally out loud to yourself with the direct purpose of helping students better understand a situation, better understand your actions, or to better understand your feelings. Self-talk is the next tools for your toolbox. The example provided here is from something the teacher is experiencing, and she is demonstrating a problem-solving process to students. She says, I'm feeling frustrated because I can't get this jar of paint open. I'm going to take a deep breath and try again. Problem statement, calming down, solution. Great way to model a problem-solving process to students. Engaging in supportive conversations provides an opportunity for you to use the personal knowledge you have about your students and their families to create emotional ties with them. While engaging with students, you want them to feel as if the lights have just dimmed in the room and the spotlight is shining on the only two people in the room, you and the student. Adults can ask questions that promote a back and forth sequence by asking open ended questions or questions that require more than one or two word answers. Asking questions that begin like, "How do you know so much about?" or "Tell me more about." The teacher might expand on information that the student has provided to him or her by repeating what the student said and then adding a small amount of additional information or additional reflection. Even if that conversation and time together is short, the power is in the strength of connection. I'm not sure that I ever felt that I had time to just sit and relax and shoot the breeze with a student when I was a teacher in a preschool classroom. But truly, you want to figure out a way to convey that feeling to students, to help them know that you desire to talk to them, to learn about them, and to be in their company. Teachers should utilize wait time to assist students who require more time to process information. This will allow students the opportunity to actually be members of the conversation, to be part of that back and forth, give and take. Some students may require alternative ways for you to communicate to them or for them to communicate to you. Kathleen will talk more about this in one of her upcoming webinars. Here's the next tools for your toolbox. This is a 6-minute video that demonstrates the 5 steps in creating a volleying of conversation back and forth between adults and children. This is a wonderful video for all adult members of a classroom to watch together to help the adults get on the same page in understanding what vocabulary and language can be used to grow these conversations with students so that there is depth and connection in them, and so that those conversations are continuing to promote responsive relationships with children. Here's another tools for your toolbox. Advancing Effective Interactions and Instruction in VPI Classrooms is a website created in collaboration with the Virginia Department of Education and the Center for Advanced Study of Teaching and Learning at the University of Virginia. Its design is to help educators provide high-quality learning experiences for children in Virginia by offering tools and resources in 3 key areas: curricula, teacher-child interactions, and instruction. One of the many resources offered is a video library of over 100 short exemplar videos narrowly focused on topics related to these 3 key areas. The video linked on the right side of this slide shows an elaborate back and forth conversation between a teacher and a little girl during center time. Not only is there tremendous depth to the conversation, but the video illustrates many of the strategies and ideas that we have talked about up to this point in this webinar. Again, to be able to watch the video, click on the picture of the teacher in the red sweater to the right of this slide in the actual PowerPoint presentation that was included with your materials that you should have received with your registration confirmation for the webinars. To say that there are a tremendous amount of moving parts in everything that's going to be going on is probably an understatement. But here's the part that we haven't talked about: the mask. In the past, we've probably relied pretty heavily on warm, caring relationships that are built on hugs and physical affection, high fives, wiping tears off of faces. We may not be doing some of those things this time around. And so you have to ask yourself, if we're not doing that, what are we doing? In making a backup plan, so to speak, you're going to have to check several things about yourself. Consider your tone. Is it a voice that is like a singing, babbling brook? Or do you sound more like Ursula from The Little Mermaid? Are you speaking in a slow, melodic manner, like a marathon runner who has kept pace, kept strength to make it to the end? Or are your words more like a sprinter who is running the 60 meters? What are you doing with your body? Is it calm? It may not feel calm. Does it look calm? Are you leaning in to invite children to communicate with you? Coming up with a list of ways that you as an individual person communicate in a nonverbal fashion may be something that you need to consider during this time because you may find that you are relying on ways to communicate that you never have before. At some point in this process, you may find yourself feeling overwhelmed and feeling frazzled. So, intentionality and planning are going to be your new way of working. Bringing those areas of communication into your daily routine may require you to put in your plan book references as to what you're going to say, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. And perhaps you may even have specific children that you will plan on targeting so that you can make sure that you are being intentional about building relationships. In concluding today's webinar, we've talked about four major areas that can contribute to building responsive relationships with children. This was part one of four in our webinar series. Please join us for the next webinar in which Kathleen will be presenting targeted social emotional teaching. I will be back with you in part four. See you soon.